Hey, what's up you guys? 2 videos ago, I shared with you guys how I made some turmeric infused oil, and I promised you guys some recipes using the turmeric oil. So here we are today. I'm gonna share with you guys 3 different turmeric themed formulas using the turmeric infused oil, of course. So I'll have that video linked below. And I'm gonna start from the easiest formula to the more difficult formula. By the way, my Etsy shop is back open, so go check out my shop. Everything is currently 20% off. Also, I was stung by a wasp over a week ago on my freaking birthday, and that's what this is if it's showing up on camera. I just want you guys to know in case you see me flailing around and notice it. My entire arm was swollen. It was ridiculous. By the way, I plan on posting 1 or maybe 2 turmeric themed formulas on my Patreon. I post 2 exclusive videos on my Patreon every single month, and I've had a Patreon for about 4 years now, so that means there is a lot of videos that you haven't seen on there. I'll link my Patreon down below. Anyways, the first product we're gonna be making is a turmeric body scrub, and I'm gonna be making a 300-gram batch. So we're starting with the star ingredient, which is turmeric infused oil, and we're gonna be using 87 grams of it. So turmeric has a number of benefits for the skin. It can help brighten dull skin, help with hyperpigmentation, dark circles under the eyes, fight acne, soothe skin. It's full of antioxidants and it's anti-aging. Also, if you wanna learn more about turmeric and where it originates, then go check out my turmeric infused oil video, and obviously you're gonna wanna go watch that so you can make your turmeric oil, right? So link below. Now we're gonna be adding in 15 grams of sunflower wax. So you can use whatever wax you would like. It doesn't need to be sunflower wax, but it may change the final viscosity of the product. It might be harder, it might be softer. So I would just go ahead and start with 5% of whatever wax you have and then tweak the recipe from there. And then I'm gonna add in 45 grams of shea butter. I would recommend using a softer butter for the scrub so your scrub doesn't become too hard. So if you don't have shea butter, you can use mango butter or some other soft butter. Now you wanna go ahead and cover your beaker. I just like to do this to prevent anything from falling in, since I always walk away and don't pay attention to it and get distracted and do a million other things. And just place it in a pan with about 1 inch or so of water, depending on how big your beaker is and how big your pan is. And place it over your stovetop on about medium heat. And you just want to wait to let it all melt down. You might have to give it a few mixes here and there to get everything to melt. All right, now that everything has been melted, go ahead and take it off the heat, and you want to give it a mix again and let it cool down. So it will start to solidify pretty quickly, and you want it to cool to around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It just depends on what temperature your preservative can safely be used at. I'm gonna be using Optifin, so as long as my product is around 140 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, I can go ahead and start adding in the cool down ingredients. So first, I'm gonna be adding in 1.5 grams of the Optifin, which, like I said, this is our preservative. Optifin can be used in anhydrous formulas, which this formula is an example of an anhydrous formula, which means it only contains oil-soluble ingredients. But Optifin can also be used in aqueous formulas, like moisturizers, or lotions, which are basically the same thing, conditioners, shampoos, but you can't use them in watery solutions. So things like toners, because Optifin needs something to help it mix in, whether it's like a suspending agent or an emulsifier. It doesn't like to just mix in with water evenly. So I added in a total of 1.5 grams of the lemon essential oil. And I do want to note this, there are a lot of essential oils that can cause phototoxicity, which means if you use them on your skin and then go out in the sun, it can cause you to get burned easier. So you do want to make sure that you're not using phototoxic essential oils in leave-on products. Since the scrub is going to be washed off, it's totally fine to use on your skin. And if you aren't comfortable with it, leave out the essential oil. And if you want a fragrance, use some kind of fragrance oil, or you just don't have to use any at all and just use more oil in place of the 0.5% in this formula. Okay, so nobody yell at me in the comments for using essential oil, please, because it's annoying. And then lastly is the exfoliant, and of course I'm gonna be using white granulated sugar. This is my favorite exfoliant personally. It's just basic white sugar you can find at any grocery store. I just personally like using sugar because it's inexpensive, it's easy to find, it's white so it doesn't mess with like the final color of your product, and I just really like the exfoliation of it. And I just like to add the sugar in a little bit at a time, mix it in, add a little bit more, mix it in until it's fully incorporated. And I'm just gonna cover it and let it sit overnight. I just realized, like, how come I don't have these like sitting in the background, you know? Just look at the pretty yellow. There we go. You guys can barely even see them, can you? Well, whatever. Anyways, so the scrub will harden up a bit more the next day since obviously it wasn't cold fully, but I've been doing a few tests with this scrub to see like if it gets softer and harder depending on the temperature, because normally I don't use waxes as the base for my scrubs. I normally use something like cetyl alcohol, cetyl alcohol, BTMS 50, emulsifying wax, and F, which actually reminds me, you could use one of those in place of the wax if you don't want to use wax. And again, you might have to do some testing on the percentages. I would start with 5 and work your way from there until you get the consistency you like. But anyways, I have found with this scrub that it pretty much stays around the same consistency all the time. I set it out on my porch on like a 80-degree day. It still was about this softness, and I'm in my house. This has been in here all day and it's around like 70 degrees and it's still really soft and like malleable. Malleable, is that a word? I don't know, but you guys know what I mean. It's just easy to dip your hands in. It's not hard or tough or anything. I think you guys are really gonna like this specific formula for its consistency. Also, it does leave a bit of like a waxy residue afterwards after you rinse it off, since it doesn't really have any ingredients in it to help with the rinse off. If you want to do that, you can add in like 5% polysorbate 80 to assist on rinse off. But I personally like the feeling of having the, I think it's more of like a lotion-y feel. So it kind of feels like I already applied lotion. If that's something you don't like, then you might want to add in 5% polysorbate 80. And you can add that during the heated phase. So that is the finished turmeric scrub. I don't know really what else to say because I feel like I've already said everything about it. Anyways, let's move on to the turmeric body butter. And this is an emulsified body butter. So this formula is a little bit more advanced than the last one, but I still think it's pretty easy. And I think as long as you follow the directions, even a beginner can do this. So since this is an emulsified body butter, that means it contains a water phase and an oil phase. So as opposed to anhydrous body butters, which are probably the formulas you see most often on YouTube, emulsified body butters are much less heavier on the skin and much less oily and greasy as opposed to traditional body butters. I also love how emulsified butters, you don't have to worry about them melting, getting too soft, getting too hard. They just stay the same consistency. So since this is an emulsified body butter, we're going to be creating an emulsion. An emulsion has a water phase, an oil phase, and a cool down phase. Emulsions are things like moisturizers, lotions, conditioners, creams, and in this case, emulsified body butter. All right, so let's start with the water phase, which is also known as phase A. Oh, and we're going to be making a 300-gram batch. And this includes 160.5 grams of distilled water and then 15 grams of glycerin. And glycerin is a humectant. This will help hydrate your skin. So just mix those two together. Before we move on to the oil phase, you do want to grab a digital scale, tare your scale, place your water phase on the scale, and write down how much it weighs. Because we are going to be heating this up and some of the water is going to evaporate. So you'll have to replace some of that water that evaporated. And then set phase A to the side, and now we can work on phase B, which is also known as the oil phase. So the first ingredient is the turmeric infused oil. I'm adding in 30 grams of it, and we already went over the benefits of this oil, so we're not going to talk about that. And then I'm going to add in 24 grams of BTMS 50. So BTMS 50 is a cationic emulsifier. A cationic emulsifier is, how I like to think of it, is a conditioning emulsifier. Cationic conditioning. See my points? So BTMS 50 is actually a common ingredient found in hair conditioners. So that is what helps detangle your hair. But BTMS 50 is freaking amazing on the skin too, because it makes your skin super soft and conditioned. So I did say BTMS 50 is an emulsifier, and an emulsifier is what blends oil and water together, and it's adding viscosity to the body butter. If you have emulsifying wax NF, Polo-Wax, Rootamulse SCG, any other all-in-one emulsifier, you can use that in place of the BTMS 50. but your product will have a different feel on the skin since those aren't cationic emulsifiers. Then I'm gonna add in 12 grams of cetyl alcohol. You technically don't need this since the BTMS 50 is an all-in-one emulsifier, but I always like to pair a co-emulsifier with my primary emulsifier to help with stability, to make sure my emulsion doesn't separate. Anything that's like a fatty alcohol or fatty acid should work in place of cetyl alcohol. But if you don't have it, you could leave it out. The consistency of your body butter will just be a bit softer. Also, cetyl alcohol is an emollient, so it does help moisturize your skin too, so you are getting benefits from it that way too. Then I'm adding in 30 grams of shea butter because of course this is an emulsified body butter, so we need butter. So I'm using shea butter because, again, like I said before, it's my favorite and it's a nice soft butter, so it won't make this body butter be too hard. Then I'm adding in 21 grams of mango butter. This is also a really soft butter. I just really like mango butter and shea butter, so I'm using a combination of both of them. You could use just one butter if you would like. So now that both phases are done, we can cover them both with some aluminum foil and place them in our water bath and put them over the stovetop on medium heat until everything is melted. So you want to make sure everything in phase B is melted, and you want phase A and B to be roughly around the same temperature. Doesn't need to be exact, so don't worry about that. Now you can take them both off the heats, and you want to pour the water phase into the oil phase. And then immediately grab your immersion blender. I will link down below to where you can buy this along with everything else I use in this video, ingredients, equipment, everything. And then you want to start mixing. All right, so then what I like to do is kind of come back periodically and mix it as it cools. But once it starts to thicken up, I don't mix it anymore with the immersion blender. I'll just hand mix it after that. And once it's around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, you can add in the cool down phase. So the first ingredient for the cool down phase is the preservative, Liquidermal Plus. You can use any other water soluble broad spectrum preservative you would like to use. Liquidermal Plus is the easiest preservative to use. So if you're a beginner, I recommend this preservative. I mixed it in, and then I'm adding in some turmeric extract. So I added in 6 grams of the turmeric extract, and if you don't have it, you don't necessarily need it since we're already getting the turmeric benefits from the oil. I just thought it would be a good addition for the body butter. Just mix all the cool down ingredients in. You want to let it sit overnight till it gets to its full viscosity. Here we are the next day. The butter has reached its full viscosity, and it's like a gorgeous, gorgeous buttery texture. Now, I'm no butter professional, so I'm not gonna use a fancy piping bag to jar up my body butter. We're just doing it by pouring it in. So yeah, I think this body butter is the perfect consistency. It's not super hard, but it's also like much thicker than a lotion, and it's a beautiful little yellow color. So cute. Oh, and I almost completely forgot about pH balancing for this product, probably because it didn't actually need it. Actually, I completely forget what the pH is because I didn't write it down, but here it is on the screen. It was like 4 something. You want a pH between 4.5 to 5.5, so it's good to go. So now moving on to the final product, which is the turmeric face wash. I would say this is definitely the most advanced, and it includes an ingredient that I know not everybody is able to source. And here I am still making products with this ingredient. So I apologize, I'm really sorry. I just really like this ingredient. Anyways, let's make the turmeric face wash. I'm gonna be making a 300 gram batch. So we're gonna be starting with phase A, and the first ingredient is some distilled water. I'm using 211.5 grams of the distilled water. Then I'm adding in 15 grams of glycerin. This is a humectant. And then I'm adding in 6 grams of turmeric extract. Again, if you don't have turmeric extract, you can just leave this out. You can use distilled water in place of it, or you can use a different extract if you would like. 1.5 grams of Liquidermal Plus. This is our preservative. You can use any other water-soluble broad spectrum preservative. And you want to make sure all of these ingredients are mixed together. Then what you want to do is add in 4.5 grams of Sepamax Zen. But you don't want to mix it in. Just let the Sepamax Zen settle on the top of the formula. Then what we're going to do is cover it and let it sit overnight. Then the next day, obviously uncover it, and you'll notice you have a bunch of gel on the top. Go ahead and just mix that all in. It might be kind of like chunky. That's totally normal. The more you mix it, the more it'll smooth out. And we haven't added in all the ingredients yet, so it won't be smooth yet. So I do want to talk a little bit about Sepamax Zen before we move on. As you guys can see, Cepamaxin is a white powder. This is also a gelling agent, so it makes clear gels, and it only gels like water-based ingredients, not oil-based ingredients. But the cool thing about Cepamaxin is that it can emulsify up to 25% oil. So we can use it as our thickener in our face wash and be able to add in oil. It's freaking amazing. So that is why I love Cepamaxin. It just makes creating gels with oil in them so easy. So anyways, now we're moving on to phase B, and the first thing I'm going to add in is the turmeric oil, and I added in 15 grams, and just look at that gorgeous, gorgeous yellow color. So pretty. Then I added in 1.5 grams of the lemon essential oil. And next I'm gonna grab 30 grams of AOS 40 and 15 grams of cocamidopropylbutane. So AOS 40 is an anionic surfactant. Cocamidopropylbutane, which also goes by cocobutane, is an amphoteric surfactant. So both of these ingredients are going to be creating the lather, the bubbliness, the cleansing properties of this face wash. So when you combine two surfactants like AOS 40 and cocamidopropylbutane, specifically both of these, when you combine them, they actually become nice and thick, as you can tell. Like, look at how much that thickened. I talk more about this in my Formulating for Beginners body wash video, if you guys want to learn more about surfactants. I also talk a lot about surfactants in my Formulating for Beginners face wash video. So if you want to learn more about this topic, I'll link both of those videos down below. I'll actually link to my entire Formulating for Beginners playlist, because if you're a beginner, watch that playlist. It will answer all of your questions. Anyways, you can just pour those into everything else and just mix them in. So the natural pH of mine was 6.6. So how I like to check the pH is I pour a little bit of the product into a 25 milliliter beaker, and then I place the pH meter in until the numbers stop jumping around, and then you know that's what the pH is. So then I grabbed my citric acid solution. This is 50% citric acid dissolved in 50% distilled water. So I ended up adding in 5 drops of the citric acid solution. I mixed it in and I let it sit for about a minute. And then I came back, I took the pH again, and I didn't write down what the pH was, but here it is on the screen. I know it got to like 5 something, so that is perfect. And yeah, now you can cover it and let it sit overnight. For some reason, I decided to bottle mine up that day and I didn't wait until the next day. But here's a good close-up of what it looks like the next day. It just looks so much more like uniform, mixed in. It just looks so much better. I love the color of this face wash and the consistency of this face wash. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. The gel, it's just so perfect. So those are my 3 turmeric themed products. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to go check out my Patreon, where I plan on posting either 1 or 2 more turmeric themed formulas. The video won't be up by the time this video is up, but the video will be up by the end of the month. I also have 2 turmeric themed formulas I made a few months back on Patreon. It was a jelly face wash and an under eye gel, and they're both turmeric themed. I've been recording for way too long, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Later.
I've been consumed by the wrath of time, like I'm shattered in this life. It's still the path that I've chosen, because I've had a vision. Now I'm on a mission to find myself with music and find someone to listen.